even though you are in these strange places, strange houses, you nonetheless want to stay in one place for a period. You desperately want some kind of stability and continuity in your life.
Yeah. I mean, that's, this is kind of a basic finding in developmental psychology, that kids want an attachment figure. They want a parental figure that they can rely on and connect with and depend on. And yeah, I never had that. In every home that I lived in, at least for the first maybe 2 or 3 homes, I hoped it would be my last. Once I realized that this was how things were going to be, by the 3rd home, the 4th home, the 5th home, I realized, oh, this is my life. And I'm, by that point, actually, when I would see Jerry's car, I would stop feeling so much anxiety and kind of grew to accept that this is how things would. And it was hard.
Do you remember how you coped with that? I mean, for example, if you suddenly found out you were moving to a new house and you got to that new house, and how would you, what were your defensive mechanisms that you put in place to kind of feel okay?
Well, initially, when I was really small, 3, 4, 5 years old, it was, I would respond with this overwhelming emotion, just this very intense despair. I would cry. I would do the sort of the classic little kid tantrum of just lose control of my body, forget to breathe because I'm crying so hard, just, desperately wanting to stay put in this place. And, by the 3rd home, and this wasn't like a conscious, calculated choice. It's just the body adapts to trauma and stress. And I stopped feeling those feelings. I just kind of shut down emotionally and became very numb. And so I would go to the next home and I would just, kind of accept it. And, I remember the 2nd home I moved in, after the 1st home, it was very upsetting to be taken to the 2nd home. In the 2nd home, I was 4 years old, and I remember I refused to eat for 3 days. And, at the time I wasn't fully aware of why I was doing this, but in hindsight, what I was doing was I was on a hunger strike. And I thought that if I just stopped eating, that they would take me back to the other home. Not that the other home was any better. They were both kind of the same.
But it was familiar.
Right. But it was familiar. I knew the kids there. I knew the foster parents there. And this new environment of people I've never seen in my life before.
What was the reason for you being turned over quite so often? Was it the foster parents had too many kids, or?
Well, there are a couple of reasons, but the main reason is that typically what happens with kids in foster care is that someone from their family of origin re-enters the picture and offers to care for the kid, whether it's the one of the parents sobers up, or an aunt or a grandmother or someone offers to care for the kid and take them in. But if a child stays with one family for too long, this can create issues of loyalty and attachment. And so if a child lives with a foster family for a year and then suddenly, their family member says, oh, I can take care of the kid, and doesn't want to go because they've been attached. And then also on the other side of that, the foster parents are often reluctant to let the child go because they've become attached to the child. And so the system is designed to prevent that from happening. So the child moves to a different home every few months. And someone, this is something that I think people could focus on as far as, reforms and policy improvements, is just sort of more attentive care to tailor each approach to each specific child's case. So for someone like me, the reason why I was put into foster care, or the reason why I was put up for adoption in the first place, is because at a certain point, once you're in the system long enough for certain periods, you're required to see a psychiatrist just to sort of check in on the mental health of the kid in the system. And this doctor carefully looked at my case file and noticed, okay, so this child's mom has been deported. There's no, his father hasn't been identified. There's no hope for this child to be reunited with his family of origin. And so we need to put him in the adoption care system. And I described that in the book. But that should have happened when I was 3. Someone should have recognized early on that there was no hope of me being reunited with my mother or father or anyone else. And it was only because this one doctor happened to actually stop for a moment and read carefully and then tell the social worker his recommendation and urged her to do this. And then I was adopted. But, you know, I spent 5 years sort of in this holding pattern in the system, changing homes, every few months.